People have been dying for years. It's the one thing we have in common between ourselves and the civilizations before us.
Archaeology is the study of the people of the past. We have been using archaeology to explore the different attitudes to death over time. Let's get real about death. Some people use different terminology such as
Passing away or lost.
but it's okay to use the word dead.
If you have younger siblings, using words like lost or passed away might be confusing for them, so it's better off to use words such as death or dying.
It's okay to use humour when you're talking about death.
You know, the other day one of my friends bought me a coffin.
Really?
I know, right? That's like the last thing I need.
Oh my god, you're killing me.
Peace,
Laugh.
songs,
Flowers.
Prayer.
Respect,
silence,
Celebration.
black and white,
tears,
stoic, sadness,
Cake.
fire,
Soil.
Gathering.
memory,
sky.
These are the words we associate with death. What words do you associate with death? We are the Dying to Talk ambassadors. Archaeology has helped us talk about death. Maybe it can help you too, plus it is interesting.
There have been loads of ways people treat their dead, from ancient Egyptian mummies to turning people into jewelry.
Alright, so I've recently heard about in Thailand and Syria, some people get buried with objects. So in Thailand, they get buried with pots, and actually in Syria it's the same thing. So children will get smaller pots, and these are typically placed in the grave around their feet and leg area, and adults will get bigger pots. So what do you think about that?
Maybe being buried with something sentimental, it would be more comforting, like it make death more comforting, because death is something where you talk about it and you're not, it's very uncomforting because it's the unknown, you don't know what's going to happen. So maybe like being buried with something, it would also ease the relatives in a way, because they'd be like, okay, at least they're buried with something like sentimental in a way.
I think there might be some objects I'd like to take with me, like childhood teddy bear, or maybe a favorite necklace that means something to me, but I'm not really sure exactly. Yeah, because I think like when someone passes away or dies, you think like of it as like they're alone, they're going through this part alone. So I think if you had like sentimental objects or something, it would make it like kind of comforts that idea. So like family members and like friends and stuff would think, okay, they're not that alone because they have things that are important to them. But then that also makes me think like that means you would have to ask the person, so you would have to ask either your partner or your friends or your family, oh, okay, can you bury me with this jacket and this necklace or something like that. So I think it's quite interesting because it would bring up the conversation. That means that you'd have to approach people that are close to you and actually discuss it with them and be like, I want to take that, I want to take this. And hopefully they'd be on board with it too. Because, so I don't know, what would you like to be buried with? Would it be your teddy bear like I said, or something else, maybe pictures of your family? What do you think you'd like to take with you?
I was just reading about it, that you can turn your loved one into a ring, or like, you know, from the remains, and it actually would get some of the remains and put them into like dishes.
Oh wow.
And cups and stuff. So what do you think about that?
I think the cups and dishes is a bit weird. I can't imagine eating out of my grandmother or something. That sounds a little bit odd. But I do think like jewelry and stuff like that makes a bit more sense to me. Like I have a friend, his mother passed away when he was quite young, and he put her ashes into a necklace. And I actually asked him about it because he always wore it, and I was like, oh, like, is it just a favorite necklace? And he told me his mother passed away, and for him he feels like she's always with him because, well, technically she is always with him. So I guess like it's very poetic and it makes sense. I think it can help someone like deal with it emotionally. It's like the person is there with you. So maybe I would do that, but the cups and dishes is not my cup of tea.
No. Would you like to turn your loved ones into a ring or some dishes?
Okay, so one of the most interesting archaeological things is probably the picture of the two grandsons holding the grandma up, who is Torogen Christina Ban. She died in 2011, and the picture that is shown is in 2016, so there's a 5-year gap, which is odd enough as it is compared to culture in this country and other countries, that normally after someone's died, 2 weeks, 1 week afterwards, you bury them. But these people in Trojans, which is a remote part of Indonesia, they keep the dead for as long as they can, till relatives who live far away, they can come together for the funeral. But there's that whole morality debate of it, like, why would you keep someone around? Is it really for the dead or is it for the living, kind of thing? So the picture is kind of weird because it is encompassing selfie culture, which is quite of this generation, where people take pictures for shock value to garner attention. So it's like, what would you feel towards that? Because that's something quite unusual you don't see nowadays.
At around 8000 BC, the bodies of the dead person were left underneath the houses. After a certain period of time, the bodies were then uncovered and the skulls were taken apart. The skulls were then covered with plaster. This was then helped to use with the remembrance period, so the loved ones would then look at the skull to help remember their person. This is quite similar to now, because some people might keep up the Facebook pages or the memorial pages, or they might keep ashes of their loved ones. So personally, I think that the bodies should be buried and we shouldn't cover the faces with plaster. I just think this is to show some respect for the dead person, and for some people it might be difficult to see their loved ones' faces every morning and to not be able to communicate with them physically. This may be similar to how some of us may deal with death now, so we might keep our ashes on the mantelpiece to help be closer to our loved ones. So guys, what do you think about this?
Alright, so believe it or not, I've always been scared of death because I guess I don't know what it is, and the thought of not knowing is kind of scary to me. But I think the more I think about it, I see like all the different ways it could be. You've got reincarnation, you've got the afterlife and stuff like that. And like reading about that and talking about that makes me more comfortable. One thing I've always been certain about is that when I pass away, I definitely want to be cremated. I think it's absolutely beautiful and it's a poetic process. It's like you're going back to where you came from. Like you came from this earth, Mother Nature, and you're going back into that. So being a third culture kid, so I'm sure a lot of you guys are, I've always felt like particularly attached to my Congolese roots, and I'd want to be, after I'm cremated, let somewhere in Congo. I'm not sure where exactly, I haven't decided, but I think it's just because I didn't get to grow up there, and it's a part of me that I feel a little bit distanced by, so I kind of want to go back there at the end of my life so I can just rest there in peace. And yeah, I think that'd be really beautiful. So yeah, that's what I want to do.
So for me, death is a subject that I'm very comfortable with, and partially the reason for it is because my religion does talk about death openly, and so when I do pass away and when it is my time, I would like to be buried and cleaned in Islamic way, like washing the body and treated with respect. And when all your loved ones go to come and pray for you for the next life, and you talk about the good times that we've had, and then you basically get buried after, and people pray for you. I think that's very comforting because people will be there for you, people will be praying for you, and so in the afterlife those prayers are with you. So there's one Quranic quote that I really relate to in terms of death and in terms of just dealing with death in general. Competition in this world diverts you until you visit the graveyard.
So my experience of death is quite a unique one. My grandfather actually died before I was born, but I always feel like I need to bereave his death for the rest of my life, because members of my family always bring him up and kind of live his legacy through me. There's always conversations about how I resemble his features and his attitude towards life. So I feel like sometimes that can be, it can weigh up on me, because I don't really know how to express my feelings. But I feel like sometimes you just need to talk about it to someone, because they won't necessarily give you advice, but it's just out. Like, if you bottle up your emotions, it's not going to work for you, and that's how mental health problems start and root from. So what I've learned about from the past couple of years is, because my family also have a problem dealing with that bereavement, it's easier for me to talk to my friends about it, because they also have people who they have lost, and most likely to be grandparents. So from them I know how to actually deal with bereavement, because they went through the whole process whilst knowing that person. So it feels like I can properly grieve through that as well. So who would you turn to for support?
My experience of loss is when I was about 9 years old, a kid in my class committed suicide. As a child, I didn't know what suicide was, and in this society we don't talk about children dying or committing suicide or anything to do with that, because it's a difficult subject. The way I dealt with it was creating an imaginary friend out of him, which I took throughout high school, and which created a problem where I now have a mental health problem which is related to psychosis. One of the ways I learned to cope with this was using different services in Bradford, but mainly it was getting the support from other young people who had either been through it or had had similar experiences. From my experience, I've learned that you can lose people in all sorts of different ways, and that everyone needs some sort of support.
So I lost my sister in 2005 to a disease called thalassemia. We lost her in within 8 months, and it was very difficult. You know, I saw my sister pass away. It's very difficult for a 5-year-old to see her 11-year-old sister kind of just fade away like that, and it traumatized my family. It traumatized me. Seeing everyone around you cry, banging on a coffin and asking, where's my sister going? My family tried to shelter me, but I could still feel the negative vibes, the vibes of grief from my family, which went into me. I make relationships now that help me, that don't replace my sister. I don't think anything can replace my sister now, but now I look for the good in things.
With the use of social media, people create Facebook pages in memories of the person, or they keep their account alive way past their time of death.
And did you know that many people design their own coffins, from having it designed like a mobile to having it designed like a skateboard? What would you like your coffin to be designed like?
So in this country we celebrate Halloween, which focuses on some aspects of death. But in Mexico they have a festival called the Day of the Dead, which they celebrate ancestors and a time where family can come together.
If you experience someone passing away, remember them. So if you're an artist, draw the person. If you're a poet, write a poem about the person. If you're a musician, write lyrics about the person. So we use the experience of that feeling to create positive change in the future, and then that helps you conceptualize the experience of what happens with death, with your own memory of the person who passed away. So creatively, what would you do to remember someone?
We have come up with a list of do's and don'ts for supporting someone who is dealing with death.
Do treat them with respect and listen.
Don't shy away from the topic of death.
Do ask them if they need any help.
Don't be scared to talk.
Do stay with them if they don't speak.
Don't be forceful with advice.
Do encourage anyone to speak about how they feel.
Don't make a joke about everything, such as someone's feelings.
Do seek help or provide help for someone who's grieving.
Don't keep your feelings to yourself.
Do make sure they know every way is grieving, so like if they're laughing, they can also be okay.
Do remember the person to help with the healing process.
Okay, so from these resources, it shows that lots of people deal with death in lots of different ways, and if you're not part of that culture, then it can seem very different to you. And so it just depends on you as that person, your culture, and how you want to deal with it, and that's the best way of dealing with death. Sometimes it's difficult to know what to say to other people when dealing with death, so we've come up with some conversation starters.
So the first one is, if you need anything, let me know.
How can I help you?
Do you have a day which you remember your loved one?
What do you need and what can I do to help?
The next few questions could be when you're talking to try and break down the taboo of death. What songs would you like to be played at your funeral?
Would you like to be buried or cremated?
What would you like to be written on your gravestone?
How would you want to be remembered?
What is your favourite memory with that person? Would you like your body to be remembered as a jewellery piece or an accessory?
Could you think of any conversation starters to use?
Thank you for watching.